Today, Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022, also known as Tuesday, marks a monumental day in anime history, the day that the best new gen Fire Force has ended, or at least the manga. The manga has ended. Fire Force is a series that I've been following for quite the amount of time now. I've been reading the manga since before the anime even started. I think it was like 3 years ago I started it, back when I was in grade 10. So it's been quite a while. It's been a weekly part of my life for 3 years, every week. I look forward to it. I remember I got into it. I was on Instagram and I saw a story and it had the manga panel of when Arthur was like, "Oh wait, I'm not left-handed, I'm right-handed." And I was like, "Damn, that guy's so stupid. Looks so funny. I got to check this out." And I did check it out and it was amazing. I finished reading through it and catching up on it in like 2 days maybe. It was a banger. And from that point on, I had known. I was like, this is going to be the next best thing. Now, is it actually the best new gen? No, I think it's third behind My Hero and Jujutsu Kaisen in my opinion. But if you gave it number one, I wouldn't be pressed about it because it is very, very good. Regardless of what anyone says, some people they're like, ugh, but the fan service, and it's really not that big of a problem. The author utilizes it in a great way, making it a part of the story, making it a really big part of Tamaki's character, and having her just as the embodiment of the concept of fan service and how it's actually not that bad. Everyone needs sex appeal in every story. It's not like it's only for the woman, because there's sex appeal for the men too. They have the fireman calendars. They have them all being super jacked. Obi is pretty similar to Maki in a way, and the fact that he's just some big jacked hot dude, Firefighters have always been notoriously hot, there's always been the hot firefighters getting the kittens out of trees, saving babies, the calendars and stuff. And so it's not that surprising that it followed over into this manga. And then Okubo utilizes it in such a great way that it's really not that big of a deal. If you can just look past it, then you would understand that it's not that big of a deal. Speaking of how the fan service is utilized in such a great way, I think the way that the series uses these concepts and then embodies them into the characters at the end was just so great. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. It was just so fantastic the way that Arthur kind of embodied plot armor. Shinra was basically Jesus. He was basically the embodiment of a main character. Speaking of Shinra being Jesus, the way that Okubo did the Chosen One storyline was so amazing. It's so easy to mess that up and make every other character feel absolutely pointless, but Okubo did it in a way where every other character was still serving their purpose, and that's because of how they embodied these concepts. Benimaru was still the strongest, and that's because he embodies the idea of the strongest character. He basically embodies the idea of Whitebeard in the first half of One Piece, or Madara in Naruto. Well, I guess Madara wasn't the strongest because Kaguya came along, but you know what I mean. And so Shinra, being Jesus, didn't feel like you were just sidelining all the characters and they were pointless. Shinra still needed all the other characters to get to where he is, even Sho and his mom. Sho being the guardian angel, or the embodiment of the guardian angel, I guess, and then his mom being the doppelganger of the evangelist, and also being Mary, Mother Mary, that is, all to fight against the saint, the vessel for the evangelist, or God, So it didn't feel like it was just Shinra. He's super powerful now. He doesn't need anyone else. He can't be beat. He was going up against God, and he needed help, despite being the Messiah. And then Shinra Bansho Man gets created, and he is even more powerful now. And Shinra Bansho Man, it was just so cool, man. Seeing the soul resonance, and then he's gets into a philosophical debate, and the amount of times that he fell into despair throughout that fight, and then came back out, and then fell into despair again, and then came back out. It was pretty cool. It was really cool. It was done really well. The Chosen One thing. I don't think anyone else has ever done it that well. Arthur still felt important because he had his fight with Dragon. Speaking of which, let's move on to that now, because that fight is easily top 2 manga fights of all time. It's up there for me with the Yoshioka fight from Vagabond. It really reminded me of Musashi versus Seijiro. The way that Musashi and Seijiro, they continuously kept using their strongest moves. They dealt their death blows, Seijiro was how many times are you going to make me draw my death blow, or whatever he said. Musashi was doing the same thing. He kept coming near death and also almost killing Seijiro, and it was this almost the exact same in Fire Force, except with a little more pizzazz, obviously, because it doesn't have to be necessarily semi-realistic. Arthur, he used the Violet Flash. He used all these other moves, and then he finally got it by cutting the entire Earth and Moon in half, and it was nuts. That shit was so cool. And usually in fights, when things keep escalating and escalating and escalating, it's just boring, right? Because Dragon Ball does it. They do the escalation, and obviously, yeah, sure, they introduced the escalation. Who cares? They did it the worst anyway. but they do it, and it's like Goku just gets stronger. Nothing special really happens. Like in One Piece, at least, Luffy changes the way he fights. Gear second, gear third, gear fourth, they all change the way he fights. And Dragon Ball doesn't really change the way he fights other than Ultra Instinct. It's just Super Saiyan, hair color change, hair gets longer, hair color change, hair gets longer, stuff like that. But he still has the same move set other than Ultra Instinct. I think he fights a bit differently, and everything's mostly the same. But for Fire Force, the way that this fight with Dragon was done, first off, it didn't feel outrageous because we already knew that Arthur got more powerful as his imagination went on. The more that he thought that this is how the story would pan out, the more he powered up. So we've known that's how Arthur's powers work since like the first two arcs or something. Not the first two arcs, but since they fought with Vulcan, I think that's when we figured it out fully, just the extent that he goes to. So it didn't feel like an ass pull. Like it didn't feel like the creator was just like, oh, let's just make him stronger and stronger for no reason, because we already knew that's how his powers work. But then the way he got stronger as well, they went from just fighting on the ground, and then they moved to like the ocean, and then they moved to the sky, and then they moved to the moon. It was nuts. It was so good. They kept pulling out their death blows, and every time they did, it changed the entire landscape of their fight. They got stronger. Like when they went to fight in the clouds, it was different from how they fought on the moon, and how they fought on the moon was different from how they fought on the ground, and so on and so forth. It was an amazing fight with so many different layers. It didn't feel like all just like one thing. Like it was like, oh, this is dragging on. It was constantly something new. When he got the space ring, it was like, oh my fucking god, I thought he was dead. And then you'd think he's actually dead when he gets fucking blasted, and then he's like cuts the moon in half, and it's just insane. And then there's another great fight. That's not even it for this final arc. Benimaru versus his doppelganger is also fantastic. The giant Nichiren around the world, you spend the whole time thinking, how is he going to defeat this doppelganger who's supposed to be way stronger than him, because he's the idea of strength in the eyes of the Asakusa people. And then Benimaru just fucking one-shots him. And he's like, wow, you guys really thought I was that weak. And it's just like, what? And so him doing that, him getting that one shot off, he's still limitless, basically. Like, we don't know the limit of his capabilities, and so seeing Shinra Bancho Man, obviously Shinra Bancho Man is stronger than Benimaru, but it doesn't take away the thought that Benimaru is the strongest. Benimaru still holds his title and the characteristic of being the big strong man. Then we had the Kurono, I think his name is, versus his doppelganger, and then also versus Benimaru's doppelganger. And that fight was also amazing because it's been a contentious topic in the Fire Force fandom for a long time as to whether the craziest man or the strongest man would win in a fight. And I always thought, I was like, it's obviously Benimaru. He's just way stronger than everyone. He would obviously win. But some people thought it would be Kurono, and this proved that Kurono gets absolutely mollywopped by Benimaru because he can even handle the doppelganger, and the doppelganger is clearly significantly weaker than Benimaru. And then there was also Benimaru versus the doppelganger of his master, and it was just amazing. The entire arc was so good. It was really the perfect way to bring about the end of the manga. And then we get into the fact that this is actually, the entire thing was a Soul Eater prequel, which was done so well. I've never seen it done in another manga, but I feel like Okubo made it look so much easier than it should be. Like, it's actually insane how well they lined up and how well it was done, because everyone knew from the start that if Shinra wanted to defeat the White Clad, he would have to eventually do some sort of like crazy high level shit to defeat God itself. And so when he did do that, it wasn't that surprising. Like it's not like, well, how is he doing this? It was all planned, and so him then recreating the world didn't feel like it was just some random bullshit that Okubo came up with in the last minute. And him recreating death, that part was also great. This all made me want to actually read Soul Eater or watch it, depending on how bad the anime actually is. I'll probably end up reading it. I think I'll do a video once I read through Soul Eater, because this isn't really a perfect send-off video. I'd much rather do a script and like make it a whole thing, but I'm not doing that. I'm just doing this off the top of my head right now. It's like a first reaction. But once I read through Soul Eater, I think I'm gonna do a video on like the whole thing, and then also seeing Excalibur come about. Like, it's just so cool seeing all the pretense before Soul Eater and understanding everything about it. I don't know much about Soul Eater. I know the main characters and I know the premise, and even just knowing that, it was so cool seeing Excalibur come to life, seeing Death come to life, seeing Death the Kid being created in Shinra's image. It's really cool. It was really cool, really well done. And honestly, I think it's going to be very difficult for any new gen to compete with this ending, because it was just so well done. And then when you compare the start to the end, I was looking back on like the start of the series after I finished it, and I was like, wow, the immense difference. They went from like teaming up and fighting just one multi-core infernal to fucking fighting the strongest man on the moon and fighting God. It was just so nuts. But it didn't feel like there was like a huge power jump. Like in Naruto, there's a massive power jump. Once the Sage of Six Paths comes in and like the Ten Tails, there's just a huge power jump with like Obito gets way too strong. Madara is way too strong. And so Naruto and Sasuke have to get way stronger too. And they kind of leave everyone behind. It's pretty gross. The same thing happens with Boruto. Like the power jump between Boruto and Naruto is also just immense. Or the power cliff, I should say. I think that's the correct term. But it didn't feel like that in this. Like everyone was powering up pretty accordingly. Like we saw Arthur almost hold his own against Dragon, and then he gets significantly stronger because of something that actually does make sense, and it seemed cool because I'm pretty sure his parents left a medal behind or something to make his like ultimate new sword. So it's not like it was just Arthur getting stronger randomly. Arthur went on a mission, made a new sword, figured things out. We followed him for a while, and he got stronger. It was like a whole training arc, and so it made sense that he could hang with Dragon, and then Dragon being as strong as he was and Arthur being as strong as he was makes sense that Shinra is also that strong because Shinra's always been one with Arthur. So him then like pushing the moon off the ground wasn't that insane. All in all, I think that this ending was just it was just fantastic. The ending with Charon coming back, everyone having fun, it was amazing. And I want to say something. I've seen a lot of people shitting on it because they're like, oh, they brought everyone back, so cringe, no stakes at all bad. But the people stayed dead for as long as they needed to stay dead. The story's over. Them being alive no longer has any matter. It doesn't matter at all that they're alive now that the story's over. They were dead for the majority of the story. Now that they are alive just at the very end, who cares? It literally bears no effect. The reason people die in anime is to increase the stakes, is to make it feel like there's a real threat. But when that threat is completely eradicated by Shinra becoming God, basically, it doesn't matter anymore. There's no threat. So there doesn't need to be stakes. And so them being brought back doesn't matter because the stakes were already gone to begin with once Shinra attained God mode and defeated the enemy. They stayed dead for as long as they needed to. The threat was there when it needed to be there. Like seeing in the Nether, that guy get his head chopped in half. The guy who wanted to wear his new shoes, die. The guy who wanted to see his child, die. That put the stakes on, and you were like, damn, anyone could die here. And it stayed like that for a while because people kept dying. It's like, oh, this guy dies, and then this guy dies, and then this guy dies. Even Obi and Arthur died when they needed to. The only time a revival is actually bad is if the character was sent off in a really great way. Like Jiraiya's death and Itachi's death, if they were to be brought back permanently, it would just ruin it because they were killed off so nicely. Like their death was fantastic. It brought more to their character. It elevated their character up. But when that doesn't happen, like the guy who got his head chopped off, that was just like a random fucking death. It just was like a scene and then it's over. It doesn't really matter. Same with Obi. Obi just got stabbed and then there was like a few panels of him be like, no, but it wasn't that crazy of a death. Like maybe if there was a funeral, then I would be like, okay, fair enough then. The only person in the series who died and could have stayed dead was Arthur, because his death was fantastic. It would have been a great ending, but seeing him come back with Excalibur was even better than that ending, so it doesn't really matter. Also, Arthur was my favorite character, so I really didn't want him dead. Anyways, I'm rambling now, just ranting about death. Lovely, amazing series, amazing final arc, done so well. It launched Arthur up into my like top 5 favorite characters. It was just fantastic. It's easily top 5, at least top 10 favorite arcs for me. Go read it. Go read Fire Force if you haven't. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Deuces.
Grow up, I wanna be an OG. Sipping 4-5s like my granddaddy. Wanna be an alcoholic, no time for family. Can't even see the distance from the people around me. I wanna be the dude that your girl calls pimp. Me, motherfucker, who could bust your lip. I bust another baby mamas, leave them crying, leave them lonely like my papa. I don't wanna be a doctor, I don't wanna be a lawyer. I just wanna be important, put my face on maps. Everybody know me cause the motherfucker raps. Deal with the devil, dealt with the devil, lead with the devil, lie. I'm the devil, I need the devil, you need the devil. Who you think you talking to? You talking to the best they never knew. No crew, never had a clique, no gang. Living by myself, never been no thing. Never need a bitch, never needed a woman. I never needed anybody but a pen and my bullet. I can't deal with the lows that'll come in the future. If I blow up, then it was good to know you. A guy like me can't deal with fame. When you hear this verse, then remember my name.